So, good evening. Welcome again to our fellow retreatants from around the world. It's been a rather beautiful day on Bere Island. One of the things you can always be sure that you will get on Bere Island is weather. It's quite a lot of weather. And in any one day you might get several seasons. So today it's been, well, I went for a long walk on the wilderness side of the island. The island is, the land side is protected, so that's where most of all of the houses are. And on the seaside, the other side of the mountain, it's a really beautiful, rather wild wilderness going down to the cliffs, and nothing between you and South America or Africa, depending which way you go. So it's a very, very beautiful and invigorating walk. And today it was a little chilly, but brilliant sunshine. And when you get a good view over the sea, you see the light and the shade chasing each other. And on the mountains, the contrast between the very brightly lit sides of the mountain and then the dark, shadowy sides is very invigorating and beautiful. And I think one of the reasons that we like walking in nature so much is that it in a way takes us out of ourselves, and of course it also connects us to the world, the physical world that we are part of and connected to. But it also helps us to understand externally what is going on inside of us. One of the fathers of the desert said that God has written two books. The first was the book of nature, and then the book of the Bible. And to be able to read the book of nature is, I think, one of the great delights of life. And it takes time to do that. Otherwise, if you don't take time for it, you don't relax and give yourself the leisure to read that book, just as if you don't give yourself the time to read the books that you buy or the newspapers that you have piled up, you never get to it. And in the same way, you have to make yourself available and give time to be open to the book of nature, and then it is there to be read. And it's certainly one of the ways, I think, in which we learn what it is to be alive. Otherwise, our concept of life is tied to the computer, or to our route to work every day, or to our office, to the routines of our lives. So we need to break out of that into a freedom that tells us what life is in its fullness. And this is from Saint Irenaeus, one of the great early Christian teachers, speaking about life. The first part of it you've probably heard many times. The second part you might not have heard before. The glory of God is a living person, and the life of humanity is the vision of God. There's at least 1 week's worth of reflection in that short sentence, so let me repeat it, and then you can memorize it before the end of the afternoon. The glory of God is a living person, and the life of humanity is the vision of God. Another translation of that is, the glory of God is a human being fully alive. But of course, to be a living person suggests that we are alive in every mode of our being, in every cell, in every manner of perception, physical, mental, and spiritual. So the first way in which we discover the glory of God, what that means, is that we ourselves must become more alive. And in doing everything we can to accept the gift of life, to maximize our potential, not to seek just the safety, the security, the cozy options, but actually to risk. And of course, growth demands risk. It's moving into the unknown, into something new. The commitment we make to being more alive is the way we glorify God. So immediately our image of God changes, and our image of ourself changes. To glorify God doesn't mean to build a beautiful church, or temple, or mosque, or synagogue. To glorify God doesn't mean even that we do just a lot of good works, or sing a lot of hymns, or say a lot of beautiful words, to tell God how glorious He is. But to glorify God is to do everything we can in our power to accept the gift of life that we are, that He has given us, to become fully alive. The glory of God is a living person, and the life of the human person, he goes on to say, is the vision of God. So what brings us to this fullness of life is the opening of our capacity to see God. Jesus tells us that we see God with a pure heart. Happy are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. And it was these series of steps, these logical connections, that led really to the Christian monastic movement, or to the Christian ascetical movement. Because the goal of the Christian ascetic, that means those who were in training, who undertook a spiritual practice, who didn't just think about going to the gym or doing their half hour of walking every day or going on a diet, but those who were actually engaged in a spiritual practice, a spiritual discipline, that these people were, the early Christians, were motivated by this idea of a pure heart. How do we purify the heart so that we can open the eye of the heart? And St. Augustine said back in the 4th century that the whole purpose of the Christian life is to restore to health the eye of the heart by which God may be seen. So that's not just a side effect, but it's actually the first priority. It counts for everything that we do, not only in our religious persona, but in every aspect of our life. Is it purifying the heart? What does a pure heart mean? It means a clear mind, a clear perception. And that clarity can only come when the mind and the heart are in harmony, when we feel centered, when there is an integration underway within us. And that we are learning to see what is there, and to withdraw the projections or the illusions or the filters through which we see and label reality. It might be the filters of our desire, the filters of our insecurity, the filters of our pride, our ego in different ways. So to take away those filters and to withdraw the psychological projections, which we all are constantly doing, idealizing some people, demonizing others, blaming some people, praising others, and for usually not very good reasons. To withdraw those projections, to stop that kind of reflex process of the mind, projecting onto others and removing those filters, that's what purifies the heart, or restores the eye of the heart, the spiritual vision, to its full functioning, full health. And then that's where the vision of God begins. We don't see God as an object, outside of ourselves. We don't understand God as an idea or as a concept. There is no image of God, apart, we would say, from the person of Jesus, the Word made flesh. So there is no physical or conceptual way we can see God. We see God with this eye of the heart, which allows us to see from the inside, in spiritual vision. Spiritual vision simply means that you are experiencing the reality of the moment from a place of non-duality. So you're not looking at it from the outside. The ego is not sitting there with its camera or its notebook recording or evaluating what it is looking at. It is part of it. Everything is part of it. And we are resonating with the reality that we ourselves are part of. So that's, I think, what we mean by spiritual vision, and it's the only way, of course, we can see God. As Saint Irenaeus says in another passage, we can never see God as an object, or know God as an object. We can only know God by sharing in God's own self-knowledge. Sharing in God's own self-knowledge. So, this is when we go for a walk on a beautiful day like this, crisp and invigorating, with constant changes of light. We are being stimulated physically, visually, biologically, but that stimulation is itself a spiritual experience, because it's teaching us what life means, what life is. You could say in a simple way that it's getting out of your head. It's moving from just thinking about what life is to breathing and knowing it directly, firsthand. This is the second part of that quotation from Irenaeus I wanted to share with you this evening. If the revelation of God through creation already gives life to all living beings on earth, so that's the first thing. So to go for a walk on the mountain on a day like this, to see creation in its glorious beauty and diversity, is a way of seeing God. God reveals himself through the beauty of creation, and creation is always beautiful. Even on a bad day it's beautiful. I won't hope that we have a bad day tomorrow to prove that, but even if it is bad weather tomorrow, it can still be a beautiful day. Every form of creation is beautiful. So if the revelation of God through creation already gives life to all living beings, the life of the human being is the vision of God, then, he says, how much more does the manifestation of the Father through the Son give life to those who see God? So here you have, in a sense, the first covenant, just what human beings have always been able to experience, which is the wonder of life perceived through the beauty of creation. So we can see God in that book of nature. It's there for us all the time, if we have eyes to see. But how much more does the manifestation of the Father through the Son give life to those who see God? So here's another intensity of life. This is another layer or another sphere of the revelation of God, or of our capacity to see and know God. That was not present, was not possible before. But the manifestation or the self-revelation of God through the Son, through the Word made flesh, intensifies the life of those who are already seeing God in the beauty of the world around them. So it's just, what do you say, an added, and what it suggests is that there is no terminal point in life. There's no point at which we say, I've had enough life, thank you very much. Or this is, as we may at times say, this is more than I can take. But the more alive we become, the more our capacity for eternal life, means boundless life, increases. And this is the nature of the divine life, that it gives life and expands the life, or the capacity for life of those who are seeing God. I've come, Jesus said, so that you may have life in all its fullness. And all its fullness is something that can never be measured. Certainly can never be contained or bottled or conceptualized or contained in a ritual. But the fullness of life is an infinitely increasing capacity. What happens when that capacity reaches certain limits or certain stages, certain degrees, is perhaps what we experience as critical moments in our life, such as birth, or moments of the revelation of love or beauty, or moments of great loss or suffering, and also the moment of death. In these critical moments, which occur more rarely, of course, than the ordinary routines of life, but in these more critical moments, which we have to be ready for and open to, our capacity for life is intensified. Ultimately to the point where the material aspect of our life is transformed completely. The material form cannot bear the weight of the glory of the life that is being poured into it. Teilhard de Chardin says, spirit is matter incandescent. As we were talking about the bicycle last night in our discussion, can't see it on this camera, but we'll show it to you before the end of the week. There's a bicycle hanging from the ceiling here, and it was the bicycle of an old postman who used to ride it delivering his letters for many years. And for the people who remember him, it's a very significant symbol and brings back many memories. And it's up there hanging from the ceiling as a symbol of the life on the island over many decades. And one day it won't be there, one day it will have disintegrated, and the molecules and the atoms of which it is composed will have all dispersed back into the great soup and have become something else. But for the time being, it's there, it's a form that we can recognize, associate with memories, just like our own bodies. It can be beautiful, it can be moving, it can be tangible, but it's not always going to be there. And the form is changing, even that bicycle's form is changing as we look at it. So At certain points, even our material reality is touched and changed by the infusion of life, by that never-ending injection of life that is the nature of creation. God didn't just paint a painting, put it up on the wall and go away. Creation is an ongoing act. We are being created. We are more and more involved in our own creation if we're awake. That's why it's important, as Jesus says, to stay awake. We become part of our own creation as we accept the gift of life. And at a certain point, hopefully early in our life, we discover that meditation, as Father John expressed it, is the way in which we accept the gift of our own being. So every time we sit to meditate, we are accepting that gift of being in a way that intensifies the life we're living. That's why we meditate. We don't meditate to get mileage points. We meditate in order to become more alive. We may at first focus upon the healing aspect of it, or that it makes us feel better and so on. But essentially and eventually we discover that the practice of meditation is expanding our capacity to be alive. And remember those words of Jesus again from the Gospel of John, which illuminate the Holy Week stories that we're remembering. I've come so that you may have life in all its fullness. And this is also what we mean by holiness. We've been talking about Holy Week and the religious experience that we are opening ourselves to. And I've been saying, perhaps too repetitively, that it's not something that we can limit to conventional religious forms and practices, but it's about making life itself a religious experience, so that everything in our life becomes a manifestation of the sacred. And therefore holiness is not about behaving well or getting good marks, but holiness is about discovering and accepting our own uniqueness and living out that destiny to the full. How long does this take? More than a week. This is a lifetime. This is the meaning of our life, to be holy. Another one of those wonderful early Christian teachers, Origen, says that somewhere that the saints are the living ones, and the living ones are the saints. It's a beautiful little koan, really, to think about as you walk around. The saints are those who are alive. The holy are those who have understood that life is a gift that is increased by your receiving of it and accepting of it. Now that might all sound well and good, but most of the time we might say life is a bit monotonous, a bit tedious. We don't have great moments every day, great experiences, good or bad. And perhaps also there's part of us that is quite happy with that. We like to avoid the extremes and just to try to construct a kind of low level or safe level of living that doesn't challenge us or shock us or expose us too much to the unexpected or the unknown. And maybe different temperaments, different personalities might be more or less inclined to that kind of approach to life. Keep it safe, don't take risks. But however we may give a certain style to our life, and we are able to do that, we perhaps don't have as much choice as we think we have, but we have some choice in how we live our life and what kind of style we live it in. But even if we do decide to live life as low-key and as safe as possible and avoid risks or dangers that push us to the edge, even if we do that, those critical moments are going to happen eventually. And we cannot escape the gift of life, or escape the fact that that gift is constantly knocking on our door, asking to be accepted, like a postman that keeps coming back and needs to get his parcel signed for. And that's the humility of God, perhaps, expressed in the story of Jesus this week especially, the humility of God constantly coming back to ask us to accept the gift that we are reluctant to accept in its full magnitude. And so often, although we may complain about the monotony or the tedium of life, it often gives us a certain sense of security. But if our life is open to this dimension of the spirit, that means to the transcendence of the ego, to this experience of non-duality, or you could just say to the unexpected, to the grace, to the gift, to the newness of life, however tedious your life may be, no 2 days are the same, and every day is a re-injection of the mystery of our own existence. But if we are open to this dimension of the Spirit, to grace, then the ordinary aspects of our lives are themselves transfigured. And we are set free from one of the great sins, really, and one of the great obstacles to our spiritual growth, which is that we look for life in the wrong place, that we look for novelty in the wrong place. And if we're not open to this spiritual dimension, the dimension that meditation throws open to us, if we're not open to that spiritual dimension, we will probably begin to fall into some kind of decadence, some kind of artificiality, where we are seeking life, or what we think of as life, or seeking variety, or seeking stimulation in the wrong way, in the wrong places. But as soon as we engage with the spiritual dimension, a transformation takes place, and we begin to see where the source of life, or the sources of life, are really to be found. Not in that artificial, imaginative realm of our consciousness, but in the direct encounter with reality through whatever aspect of ourselves we may be engaged in at that moment, whether it's the physical, or the intellectual, or the spiritual. Anyway, what this points to, I suppose, is that meditation changes our life. It changes it because it makes us more alive. It teaches us what the nature of life itself is, that it's more than we can measure. And it also changes us because it transforms one of the most essential aspects of human existence, which is desire. It's difficult for us to imagine life without desiring something. We may just be desiring our next meal, or desiring happiness, or desiring fulfillment, or desiring a peaceful evening. We may focus upon desire in many different ways, but the very nature of desire is transformed through the practice of meditation. We feel the need for something. We feel the desire for it. But then we have to know what it is we're feeling. Sometimes we're just driven by a vague and a blind desire that we don't understand. Maybe arising from the wounded parts of our past, or from our longing. But we need the space to be able to be in touch with our desire, to know what it is we're wanting, to be able to see it, identify it. And then the third stage in the transformation of desire is we have to decide how we are going to live with this desire or respond to it. Do we seek it? Do we go in search of it? Or do we wait and let it find us? And both responses, I think, are necessary. To be fully alive means that we are in touch with our desire. It means to be able to recognize eventually, anyway, that the root of all desire is our desire for everything. Our desire for fullness, completeness, to be fully alive. And therefore, our root desire is whatever our 5-year plan, life plan is. Our root desire is our desire for God. And when that root desire has been experienced, we first experience it as something we cannot understand or something we cannot name. But when that root desire for God has been experienced, we really move beyond anything we call desire altogether. We move into the fulfillment of a fundamental human need. But when we're in touch with this fundamental desire, which is what meditation opens us to, because we're letting go of all other desires and images, we're moving into the poverty of spirit I was talking about today. So as we approach this root desire for God, which is our way to the fullness of life, as we experience that root desire and become more fully alive, we enter into a space in which we see, or way of being, in which we see that to accept the gift of life means what? What does it mean, Father John says, to accept the gift of your being? I think it means two things. It means that we are energized and activated to go in search of it. And every day, the circumstances of our lives, the details of our lives, the people we live with, the internal changes we're going through, the environment we're in, every day presents us with more than enough opportunities to go in search of that. But we have to respond to that. We have to engage with today, the people we're with, the timetable we've got, the things that happen or don't happen. We have to engage fully with that without escaping from it. At the same time, we have to sink back into a place where we are not seeking or actively looking for fulfillment, but be grounded and rooted in a place of stillness, and stillness is beyond desire, a place of stillness where we allow God to seek us. I often think that these two aspects of desire or being alive are reflected in the two parables of the kingdom of God that Jesus gives one after the other in the Gospel of Mark. In the first, the kingdom of God is associated, and the kingdom of God is this experience of the fullness of life. So the first, it's found as a treasure buried in a field. You're just walking across the mountain one day and you happen to trip over a chest of gold, okay? And you go and sell everything you have and buy the field in which that treasure is buried. So it happens by chance. You're just walking, you're not looking for the buried treasure. You're just out. But the second parable, immediately after that, is almost identical, but it's significantly different because he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking out for fine pearls. And when he finds one of very great value, then he sells everything he has and buys it. So we have these two, as it were, the yin and the yang, the contemplative and the active, ways of accepting the gift of life, the gift of our being, of becoming fully alive. And our times of meditation, which we'll move into now, are those times where we are not actively seeking or desiring, we are just being, open to the gift as it is given to us. When we get up from the meditation, we re-engage with our active lives with a sense of meaning and purpose, not randomly, but with a sense of meaning and direction, and we seek in the circumstances of our lives and the challenges of our lives how we receive and accept the gift. So we're going to take our time of meditation now. Where are our musicians? Musicians have all gone. We were going to put them on the screen now and show them to you, but where's Vince? Is not here? Oh. Okay, we'll have to do it another time. So I think we'll just conclude now. Give people a couple of minutes to stretch if you want to stretch. Let's stay quiet because that will be the best preparation for meditation. But then after the meditation we'll have some time for discussion and questions. So for those joining us online, we say good night and we look forward to being with you tomorrow. Okay, do you want to take a moment to stretch? No? Don't have to if you don't want.